in Egypt. But this administration did not help, did not delay the elections long enough to allow the true Egyptian people to be heard. And as a result, no matter how unfair it may be or how fair it may be, the Egyptian people, millions and millions of them, have a terrible perception of the leadership of the United States. They make clear they like America, they like the United States, but the leadership currently did them great harm. And we know that when the president was elected, as he went around and spoke in the Middle East, some said that this was going to really increase the love and affection between the United States and majority Muslim countries. And the polling data seems to say just the opposite, that our country, because of the leadership of this administration, is respected and admired far less than it ever was, even under the Bush administration, because at least under the Bush administration, they knew that Bush would be consistent whether they liked him or not. So I think it'd be helpful to look at some of these pictures. One of the big posters that was being used during the revolution, and make no mistake, when the Egyptians put messages in their big banners and signs in English, they want the message coming to America. The message these Egyptians had, Egyptians spoke. Al-Sisi listened. We, the people, have spoken. And so they're appreciating the military leader that after 20, 30 plus million Egyptians arose that dwarfed the small number of votes that Morsi got in the early election. The people of Egypt spoke. This was a revolution, an uprising by the people. And the military heard and witnessed the people rising up. And it answered and said, okay, Morsi goes. Because they recognized, as did the vast people across Egypt, that he had violated the Constitution. He had become a tyrant. He had become a dictator, and he had to go. And our administration here was slow to recognize. And it's very sad, because we do have a very intelligent president in the United States, yet the image they have in Egypt is that he sided with the wrong people, that the masses in Egypt did not want. So on this same poster where they're praising the leader of the military in Egypt for listening to the majority of adults in Egypt and doing the right thing for democracy, they have a red X through our great president's face. Terribly unfortunate. It does not actually do what this president and most of us in this country hoped. Well, at least majority Muslim nations will look on us more favorably. And this is what we're seeing. If I can get help. Yeah, go ahead and stay close and turn those around because it gets awkward. There we go. Thanks. Another poster here. During the massive protests, from what I was told by people that were there, they got really upset as CNN kept saying, this is a coup, this is a coup, trying to diminish the importance of what was happening with 20, 30 million Egyptians rising up. So obviously they mean this for the United States consumption, but these are things that massive numbers of people in Egypt are supportive of. It's a revolution, not a military coup. 33 million Egyptians protesting peacefully against Morsi the tyrant, terrorist, who was supported by USA. They want to make sure that we understand this is the real people of Egypt rising up, and we need to be supportive of that. Another sign, new Supreme Guide of the Muslim Brotherhood. Ann Patterson hands off Egypt. Multiple of those signs around as people were gathering. They've seen what this administration did, and they didn't like it, and these were the masses. The symbol of the Muslim Brotherhood in the same circle with CNN, because they began to feel in Egypt that CNN was not reporting accurately, that the people did want to live in peace with Christians and did want to live in peace with secularists and not at the hands of a Muslim Brotherhood tyrant. This sign, in both English and their language, says Obama supports terrorism. Well, of course, President Obama doesn't support terrorism. Of course he does not. But the way it looked to Egyptians when we were supporting a terrorist, they presume we must, and our president must, support terrorism. We know he doesn't, but they don't know that, because this nation, this administration, has supported terrorists in Libya, supported terrorists in Egypt, and is now trying to get support for terrorists in Syria. Another sign during the demonstrations, obviously for U.S. consumption. My dear American friend, when you get killed by terrorists, do not blame anyone but your President Obama and his administration. Well, that's ridiculous. When we're killed by terrorists in America, we should not blame the president. There may be negligence in America by many people when it occurs, as I believe happened with the Boston bombing. We were given information that was not properly utilized because of the handcuffing that has gone on within our FBI, within our intelligence community, within our State Department, and the purging of training material to keep, as one intelligence officer said, to keep us from being able to see who our enemy is. We have hurt ourselves in a terrible fashion in our ability to understand who wants to kill us. So I don't support any of these signs. I don't think they're proper. But I think it's important to understand what the people in Egypt are seeing and thinking, so that we can give them the proper perspective on American people. This one is, you can't really read the whole thing, but it basically is making clear that this is not a coup, it's the people. Thanks to our great army supports our great revolution. And there are those who would say that, in fact, the October Revolution in the Soviet Union, which Lenin appeared there in St. Petersburg and persuaded some people to support his revolution. But that revolution, that little gathering, would not have done any good. Historians know it was not until Trotsky went across to the military, across the river, and I've been there, and he got up on something and he starts speaking eloquently to the military. And once he convinced the military to side with Lenin, then there was a true revolution that occurred. Nobody called that a coup. It was a small handful of people around Lenin rising up, but they convinced the military to support the October Revolution. And as a result, there was a revolution, and not just a tiny little uprising, which it would have otherwise been without Trotsky's eloquence. So that's why it's important to understand, when 33 million in Egypt rise up, this is not an in-house coup. This is the masses of a great country rising up to say, we yearn to be free, and we don't want a radical Islamist controlling our country. And it's important for people of the United States to understand this is where we are. And 33 million people, the vast majority of the adult voters in that country, want to make clear we want to live in peace with Christians, secularists. And those are the people we can hold accountable and trust more that they will do the right thing. Because the support for the persecution and Christians around the world, the persecution and the killing of Christians, the torturing of Christians around the world is growing like never before. And this great nation that arose based on Judeo-Christian ethics stands idly by as the last public Christian church in Afghanistan closed, as the last Jew, publicly admitting Jew, leaves. I mean, that's when Afghanistan still had vast American presence. And even today we could still turn the tide if we chose to. But we are not. And there may be an accountability issue someday with the judge of all judges. Because as John Quincy Adams argued right down here below us in the old Supreme Court chamber downstairs, in the Amistad case, as he stood there representing Africans who were free Africans, but then they were wearing chains and they were said to be slaves because they had been captured by other Africans and sold and brought to the Caribbean, and then the Caribbean put on the ship, the Spanish ship, the Amistad, and then they land in America by mistake, and the Africans wanted to be free, and the Spanish said, no, they're our property. And ultimately, the Supreme Court downstairs, the last part, you can find it online, Mr. Speaker, the last part of John Quincy Adams' oral argument, as he was literally frightened because he knew if he had not done an adequate job to argue his case, that those Africans would wear chains for the rest of their lives, and their children would, possibly their children, if he did not do an adequate job in representing them. And he didn't feel good about the first 2 days of his argument. So he finishes by pointing out, he asks his question, where's Chief Justice Marshall? And he ran through the names of every justice that had been on the court and was dead. And one of the justices of that 9-justice court had died during oral arguments one night. It was not during the arguments themselves, but during the course of the arguments. So they were down last. He asked where he was. He asked where the Solicitor General was that had last argued a case against him in the early 1820s. And he ends up pointing out, in essence, they've all gone to meet their judge. And the biggest question about their lives is, did they hear, well done, good and faithful servant? John Quincy Adams won the case, and those Africans left as free as they should have been. But some of us have a fear that if we do not do more to support truth and justice and the American ideals that this country was founded on, there will come a day of judgment. And but for grace, it would be a horrible thing.